May 9th, 1945, 6:23 a.m., somewhere in Lower Saxony, Germany. The war ended yesterday. Yesterday, at precisely 11:01 p.m., the instruments of surrender were signed. Yesterday, the Reich that was supposed to last 1,000 years officially ceased to exist after 12. But 20-year-old Sofie Adler doesn't feel liberated. She feels terrified. She's sitting in the back of a British transport truck with 11 other German women, all of them Wehrmacht Helferinnen, auxiliary personnel who served in non-combat roles, radio operators, cipher clerks, administrative staff. None of them fired weapons. All of them are now prisoners. The truck bounces over cratered roads heading west, away from the Soviet advance, into British custody. And Sofie can't stop her hands from shaking. For the past week, refugees streaming east had brought stories. What happens to German women when the Allies arrive? The propaganda had been explicit. Years of carefully crafted images showing Allied soldiers as brutal, undisciplined, interested only in revenge. Sofie had seen the posters, heard the radio broadcasts, attended the lectures that warned what capture would mean. But here's what's making Sofie's chest feel tight with something that isn't quite fear. She doesn't want freedom. She wants something else entirely. Something she can barely admit to herself. Something that makes her feel guilty and confused and terrified all at once. The truck stops. Canvas flap pulls back. Morning light streams in. A British voice, male, firm but not harsh, calls out in German, "Everyone out slowly. You're not in danger. Not in danger." That's the first deviation from everything she'd been told. Sofie climbs down. Her legs are unsteady, not from the ride, but from the realization that she's about to confront something she's been thinking about for months. Something forbidden. Something that makes her feel like a traitor to everything she was raised to believe. Standing in formation are British soldiers. Clean uniforms. Proper bearing. And as Sofie's eyes move across them, she feels something she absolutely should not feel. Something that's been building for months as the Reich crumbled, and she started questioning everything she'd been taught. One soldier in particular catches her attention. Sergeant, maybe 28 years old, dark hair, serious expression, strong features. He's directing the processing with quiet authority, treating the German prisoners with professional courtesy that contradicts every propaganda warning. And Sofie thinks, not for the first time, but more intensely than ever before, I wonder what it would be like. Not freedom, not repatriation, not returning to whatever remains of Germany. But him, them, British soldiers who were supposed to be the enemy, but who look nothing like the monsters propaganda promised. Who look like men, strong, capable men who make something inside her feel dangerously alive. She wasn't supposed to think these thoughts, wasn't supposed to want these things. But standing in that morning sunlight, watching British soldiers process German prisoners with careful professionalism, Sofie realizes something that both terrifies and thrills her. She doesn't just want freedom from captivity. She wants freedom from everything she was taught, everything propaganda told her to feel, everything the Reich said was forbidden. And that forbidden thing, that thought she's been suppressing for months, is crystallizing into dangerous clarity. She wants to know what happens when you stop being enemies, when you're just people, when the rules that kept everything separate suddenly don't apply anymore. She wanted more than freedom. She wanted possibility. And that made her more dangerous than any Allied interrogator could imagine. The processing takes hours, medical examinations, delousing, documentation. Sofie moves through each station in a fog, hyper-aware of every British soldier she encounters, not with fear, with something else entirely. She notices details she shouldn't notice. The way one corporal's accent makes English sound musical. The care with which a medic examines her sprained wrist. The small kindness of a guard who retrieves her dropped identification card without making her feel humiliated. Each interaction chips away at the wall propaganda built. Each moment of unexpected humanity makes the forbidden thoughts grow stronger. By evening, the women are assigned to a temporary holding facility, converted barracks with actual beds, thin mattresses, wool blankets. Nothing like the horror scenarios they'd been warned about. Sofie lies on her cot that night, staring at the ceiling, and lets herself think the thoughts she's been suppressing for months. Lets herself acknowledge what's been building as the Reich collapsed and she started questioning everything. She doesn't just want freedom. She wants to understand what she was taught to hate, wants to know the enemy as people rather than propaganda caricatures, wants to discover if the feelings stirring inside her, curiosity, attraction, a strange yearning she can't name, are possible, real, permissible. The woman on the next cot, Anna, former radio operator from Bremen, whispers into the darkness, "Are you awake?" "Yes." "I keep thinking about something strange." "What?" Anna is quiet for a moment. Then, so quietly, Sofie almost doesn't hear. The guard who supervised our shower detail, the older one with gray hair. He was so proper, professional, not looking, not threatening, just making sure we had soap and towels. She pauses. I realized I was disappointed. Disappointed? That he wasn't looking. Isn't that terrible? After everything we were told about what they'd do to us, part of me was almost disappointed that he was so respectful. Anna's voice carries shame. What's wrong with me? Sofie's heart is racing because Anna just articulated something Sofie hasn't dared admit. I don't think anything's wrong with you. Then why do I feel this way? Why am I thinking about these men, these British men who are supposed to be our enemies, and feeling things I shouldn't feel? Because propaganda lied, Sofie says quietly, about what they're like, about what we're supposed to feel, about everything. What if, Anna whispers, what if the propaganda lied about what's forbidden too, about what we're allowed to want? The question hangs in the darkness, dangerous, honest, the kind of question that could get you reported 3 days ago, but now, with the Reich gone, with everything they knew shattered, feels like the only honest question left. I've been thinking about that for months, Sofie admits. Since the war started going badly. Since I started seeing British POWs working details near our post. Since I realized they weren't the monsters we were told about. Since I started... She stops, unsure how to finish. Started what? Started wanting to know what it would be like, to talk to them, to see them as men rather than enemies, to... Sofie's voice drops to barely audible. To see if what I was feeling was wrong, or if what I was taught was wrong. And? I think what I was taught was wrong. I think we were lied to about everything, including what we're allowed to want. The conversation ends there, but it opens something inside Sofie. Permission to think the forbidden thoughts, to acknowledge the desires she's been suppressing, to admit that she doesn't just want freedom from captivity, she wants freedom from all of it. From propaganda, from rules about who you're allowed to find attractive, from the ideology that said British soldiers were inferior when everything she's seeing suggests they're just men, capable, disciplined men who are treating prisoners with more humanity than the Reich showed its own citizens by the end. May 15th, 1945. 1 week after surrender. Sofie is assigned to work detail, sorting supplies in a warehouse. The supervisor is a British corporal named Thomas Bennett, 26 years old, from somewhere called Yorkshire. He greets them in careful German. Good morning. We have work to do. I will show you. Please ask questions if you don't understand. His accent is terrible, but the effort matters, and his demeanor, calm, professional, treating them like workers rather than defeated enemies, makes something flutter in Sofie's chest. The work is straightforward, organizing crates, cataloging supplies, nothing demanding. Bennett works alongside them rather than just supervising. When one of the heavy crates proves difficult, he helps lift it, his strength casual and unassuming. Sofie finds herself watching him, the way he moves, the concentration on his face when he's checking inventory lists, the patience with which he explains tasks through the language barrier. And she thinks, this is what I wanted to know. This is what was forbidden. Not the work, not the captivity, but this awareness, this recognition of a man who's strong and capable and kind. This feeling that's building inside her that has nothing to do with nationality or war or any of the categories propaganda insisted were permanent. During the lunch break, Bennett distributes rations: bread, cheese, tea. He sits on a nearby crate, eating his own meal, maintaining appropriate distance, but not being cold. Anna, whose English is better than the others, asks him a question. "How long you are soldier?" "Since 1940. 5 years now. Too long." He pauses. "I am ready to go home. Be normal person again." "What is normal person?" Bennett smiles slightly. "Teacher. I was teacher before war. History. I want to go back to teaching. Want to forget about war and enemies and all of this." The word enemies makes Sofie's chest tighten, because sitting here, eating lunch, working together, it doesn't feel like enemies. It feels like people who happen to be on different sides of a war that's already over. "What about you?" Bennett asks. "What did you do before war?" The women exchange glances. Nobody wants to admit they served the Reich, but Bennett's expression is genuinely curious, not judgmental. Sofie speaks up, her English halting. "I was student, university, literature, then war, and I become radio operator." "Literature? What kind?" "German romantic poets, Heine, Eichendorff." She expects dismissal. Instead, Bennett's face lights up. "I know Heine. Ich weiß nicht, was soll es bedeuten." My university German professor loved his work. The fact that this British soldier knows German romantic poetry, that he's quoting Heine in terrible pronunciation but with genuine appreciation, does something to Sofie, makes the forbidden thoughts impossible to suppress. She wants to know more, wants to talk about poetry, wants to discover what else they might have in common across the divide of war and nationality. She wants more than freedom. She wants connection, understanding, the possibility of seeing this man not as British soldier, but as Thomas who taught history and loves poetry and is tired of war. That evening, back in the barracks, several women gather for whispered conversation. Anna starts it. "All right, we need to talk about what's happening." "What do you mean?" someone asks, though everyone knows. "Don't pretend. Half of us are developing feelings, thoughts about the British soldiers, about specific British soldiers." Anna looks around. "I'm not the only one noticing them, thinking about them, wanting—" She doesn't finish, but she doesn't need to. The tension in the group is palpable. A woman named Liesel speaks up. "It's wrong. They're the enemy. We shouldn't—" "We're the enemy," Anna interrupts. "Past tense. The war is over. We lost. Germany doesn't exist the way it did. All the rules, all the propaganda about who we're supposed to hate and what we're supposed to feel, those rules don't apply anymore." "But it's not just that the rules don't apply," Sofie says quietly. "It's that the rules were always lies. They told us British soldiers were inferior, undisciplined, brutal. Look at how they're treating us. Look at how they conduct themselves. The propaganda was wrong about everything." "So what does that mean?" Liesel demands. "That we're allowed to—" "What? Develop crushes on our captors? That's not liberation. That's complicated," Sofie finishes. "Yes, it's complicated and uncomfortable and probably inappropriate, but it's also honest, more honest than anything we were taught." Are you saying, Anna asks carefully, that you want something to happen with one of them? Sofie is quiet for a long moment. Then, with courage she didn't know she had, I don't know what I want to happen, but I know I want the freedom to figure it out, to see if what I'm feeling is real, to discover if connection is possible across all the barriers that supposedly make it impossible. That's dangerous, Liesl warns. Everything is dangerous, Sofie replies. We're German prisoners in British custody. Our whole world collapsed. Everything we believed was exposed as lies. What's one more dangerous thing? The conversation continues late into the night. Some women are horrified. Some are curious. Some admit, quietly, shamefully, that they've been having similar thoughts, similar desires. And Sofie realizes she's not alone, that many of them are grappling with the same forbidden feelings, the same recognition that the enemy doesn't look or act like the enemy, the same dangerous curiosity about what might be possible in this strange new world where all the old rules no longer apply. June 3rd, 1945. Nearly a month after surrender, the routine has become familiar. Work details, meals, evening recreation time. The terror has completely faded, replaced by something more complex. Sofie and Thomas Bennett have developed a pattern. During work breaks, they talk about books, about pre-war lives, about hopes for the future, always appropriate, always maintaining proper boundaries, but intimate in their own way. Sofie has learned that Thomas wanted to be a university professor before the war interrupted everything, that he misses his family's farm in Yorkshire, that he reads voraciously, history, literature, anything he can find. Thomas has learned that Sofie dreamed of studying comparative literature in Vienna, that she loves Rilke and Goethe, that she questions everything now, every belief, every assumption, every piece of propaganda she absorbed. Their conversations happen in a mixture of English and German, with frequent pauses for translation and clarification. But somehow, despite the language barrier, they understand each other, and the forbidden feelings grow stronger. One afternoon, they're alone in a corner of the warehouse. Sofie is cataloging medical supplies. Thomas is checking inventory against manifests. The silence between them feels charged with everything unspoken. Sofie. His voice is quiet, serious. She looks up. Can I ask you something? Personal? Her heart rate immediately spikes. Yes? This situation, working together, talking. Is it? He struggles for words. Is it difficult for you? Because of what you were taught about British soldiers? The honesty of the question demands an honest answer. Yes and no. What does that mean? Sofie sets down the clipboard she's holding. It's difficult because everything I was taught says this shouldn't be happening, that I shouldn't enjoy talking to you, shouldn't look forward to work details, shouldn't feel... She stops, unsure how far to go. Feel what? Feel like you're the most interesting person I've met in years. Feel like our conversations matter more than anything else happening here. Feel like... She takes a breath. Feel like maybe what I want isn't just freedom from captivity. Maybe what I want is freedom to explore what this could be without all the barriers. Thomas is very still. And what do you think this could be? I don't know. Friendship, maybe, or something more. Or maybe just the recognition that enemies can become people to each other, that attraction doesn't follow political boundaries, that desire doesn't ask permission from ideology. Sofie, I need to tell you something. Her breath catches. Yes? I requested this assignment, supervising the women's work detail, because you're here, because our conversations are... He pauses. Because I look forward to them, because you challenge me intellectually in ways nobody has since before the war. Because when I look at you, I don't see a German prisoner, I see someone remarkable who's trying to rebuild her understanding of the world. Thomas, I know it's inappropriate. I know the power dynamic makes anything more than professional interaction wrong. But I needed you to know that you're not alone in feeling whatever this is. They stand in the warehouse surrounded by supplies, aware that anyone could walk in at any moment. The power dynamic remains, guard and prisoner, victor and defeated. But something else exists too, something that's been building through weeks of careful conversation. What do we do? Sofie asks quietly. We acknowledge what we're feeling. We maintain appropriate boundaries because that's the right thing to do. And when you're repatriated, when you're no longer a prisoner and I'm no longer your supervisor, we see if this feeling survives in the real world. How long until repatriation? Weeks, maybe months. The system is overwhelmed. Processing millions of displaced persons takes time. And then? Then you go back to Germany, I probably go back to Yorkshire, and we write letters if you're willing. See if what we both feel now translates outside these circumstances. It's sensible, appropriate, and completely inadequate for what Sofie is feeling. What if I don't want to wait? The words are out before she can stop them. Dangerous words. Forbidden words. Thomas's expression shows the same conflict she feels. Want versus appropriate. Desire versus duty. Sofie, we can't. The power dynamic makes anything else? I know all the reasons. She struggles to articulate the complex tangle of feelings. I spent my whole life being told what I was allowed to want, who I was allowed to desire, what thoughts were forbidden, and all of it was lies. So now I don't trust any of the rules, including the ones that say, this is impossible. It's not impossible, Thomas says quietly. It's just complicated. Timing and circumstances and propriety all say we should wait, but that doesn't mean what you're feeling, what we're both feeling, is wrong. Then what is it? It's human, messy, inconvenient, real. And maybe, he adds with slight smile, maybe it's proof that propaganda fails eventually, that you can't control who people find remarkable. That connection happens despite all the barriers designed to prevent it. The conversation ends there. But everything has changed. The feelings are acknowledged, named, no longer something Sofie is fighting alone. She wanted more than freedom. She wanted the possibility of something that shouldn't be possible. And somehow, impossibly, that possibility exists. The summer passes. Sofie continues working. The forbidden feelings don't fade. They intensify. Every conversation with Thomas deepens the connection. Every carefully maintained boundary makes the desire stronger. Other women in the camp notice. Some disapprove. Some are envious. Some admit they're experiencing similar attractions, similar forbidden desires. It's like we've been let out of a cage, Anna observes one evening. Not just physical captivity. Mental captivity. All the rules about what we're allowed to feel, those rules are gone, and now we're discovering we want things we never knew we wanted. Or things we knew we wanted but weren't allowed to admit, Sofie adds. Do you think anything will actually happen between you and the corporal? I don't know. Maybe. After repatriation, after enough time passes, that the power dynamic dissolves. Or maybe the feeling will fade when circumstances change. Maybe it's just captivity and emotional intensity creating illusions. Do you believe that? No, Sofie admits. I think what I feel is real. I think Thomas is remarkable and kind and intellectually compelling. I think if we'd met before the war, if we'd met as normal people, I would have felt exactly the same way. Then what are you waiting for? For circumstances to change, for the barriers to come down, for it to be possible without being inappropriate. August 15th, 1945. 3 months after surrender, Sofie's repatriation papers finally come through. She'll be processed next week, sent back to Germany to whatever remains of her former life. Thomas brings her the news personally. His expression shows the same conflict she feels, relief that she's going home, sadness that their time is ending. 1 week, he says quietly. 1 week. They're in the warehouse again, alone, the last time they'll have privacy before she leaves. Sofie, I need to say something before you go. Please don't, she interrupts. If you say it, it becomes real. And if it's real, leaving becomes impossible. It's already real. Pretending otherwise doesn't change what we both feel. She knows he's right. Then say it. I think you're extraordinary. I think these months have been the most intellectually and emotionally engaging of my entire life. I think when you leave, something important leaves with you. And I think... He pauses. I think I'm going to write to you, if you're willing, because I need to know if this feeling survives distance and time. And if it does, then we figure out the rest, somehow. Sofie leaves the camp on August 22nd, 1945, returns to a Germany that barely exists, to ruins and displacement and the massive task of rebuilding. And she writes to Thomas Bennett, care of his family's farm in Yorkshire. The first letter is tentative, testing whether the connection survives separation. His response arrives 3 weeks later, just as careful. But then the letters continue, weekly, then twice weekly, then almost daily. They write about everything. The challenge of rebuilding, the processing of the war, the discovery of who they are without propaganda defining them. And through letters, the forbidden feelings transform into something undeniable. March 1946. Thomas writes, I've been discharged. I'm teaching again at a grammar school in York. I'd like to visit Germany. See you outside the context of captivity. See if what we both felt translates to normal circumstances. If you're willing, Sofie writes back immediately. Yes, please come. I need to know if what I felt was real or just the product of extraordinary circumstances. I need to know if wanting more than freedom was the right instinct. He arrives in April 1946. They meet in Hamburg at a cafe. It's awkward at first, the echo of their former dynamic, the strangeness of meeting as equals. But then they start talking. About books, about teaching. Both hope to teach literature, about building futures from the wreckage of war. And Sofie discovers something crucial. The feeling wasn't captivity, wasn't circumstance, was real. Thomas Bennett is exactly as remarkable as she remembered. The connection hasn't faded. The intellectual compatibility remains. The attraction has only intensified. They marry in 1947. Thomas takes a position teaching at a British military school in Germany. Sofie completes her literature degree. They build a life together. Their children grow up hearing a simplified version. During the war, after the surrender, it was complicated. The real story, the one they tell each other privately, is about wanting more than freedom, about forbidden thoughts that became honest desires, about propaganda failing when confronted with actual human connection. Sofie Adler didn't just want freedom from captivity. She wanted freedom from ideology, from rules about who you're allowed to desire, from limitations on what's possible between former enemies. She wanted connection, understanding, the possibility of something that shouldn't be possible. And that dangerous want, that forbidden desire, became the foundation of everything that mattered. Decades later, Sofie would tell her grandchildren, I was taught my whole life what I was allowed to want, who I was allowed to find attractive, what thoughts were forbidden. All of it was lies designed to control me. So what did you do? I stopped asking permission, stopped waiting for someone to tell me what was allowed, started figuring out what I actually wanted instead of what I was supposed to want. And what did you want? More than freedom. I wanted possibility. I wanted to discover if connection was possible across all the barriers designed to prevent it. I wanted to know if desire could override ideology. And could it? Sofie smiled. Your grandfather proved it could. We proved it together. Their story revealed something important, that desire doesn't ask permission from politics, that attraction can't be controlled by propaganda, that sometimes wanting the forbidden thing is exactly right. Sofie wanted more than freedom. She wanted Thomas. She wanted connection. She wanted to explore feelings that ideology said were impossible. And she got all of it, not by following rules, not by being appropriate, but by being honest about what she wanted, even when wanting it was forbidden. Sometimes the most forbidden desires are the truest ones. Sometimes wanting more than freedom is exactly the kind of freedom that matters most. Sofie Adler wanted more than freedom, and that dangerous want changed everything.